Welcome to ACTPod, a podcast show that sheds light on the stories and impact of the social sector. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. Let's begin the change.
Hello, welcome to ACTPod, our story, our continent. My name is Omoye, and I'm excited to be on this episode again to have another beautiful conversation with you. Today, we'll be talking about sustainability. In fact, it's Sustainability 102. We had a conversation with Mrs. Inia Bimbola on Sustainability 101. And today we'll be delving deeper into the topic of sustainability, especially focusing on ESG practices. In the corporate world, there's been a lot of talk about ESG practices, incorporating it into our businesses and our organizations. But driving it home to nonprofits, there seems to be a bit of a gap. And today we want to address that gap when we're talking about ESG practices, but focusing on the S in the ESG, and that is social. I'm not going to be giving you all the details. I have another expert in the studio with me. She's a sustainability expert, and she'll be speaking to this, and that's in person of Oluwasoromidayo George. I hope I got the pronunciation of your name well.
You did.
Oh, great. All right. She is the Corporate Affairs and Sustainability Director at Coca-Cola Company, right?
Yes.
Okay. You're welcome, Ma. So good to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Okay. So we'll get into the conversation. Like I'd already given a foundation to what we'll be talking about. It's really just driving it home. I know a number of people have heard about ESG, but some haven't. And those who have, not everybody has the appropriate knowledge of what it really means and how we can incorporate sustainability to the work that we do. And this conversation is supposed to address that. So before we get into the meat of the conversation, I want you to just tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, so like you said, well, I don't consider myself to be an expert.
Okay.
But maybe people would, because I'm a practitioner, and one of my core areas of responsibility has always been sustainability. Well, I started from CSR, so corporate social responsibility in those days, corporate citizenship. Then we moved on to sustainability. Now we're talking about ESG. Honestly, I'm not a fan of, different nomenclatures, but there's always something like a buzzword.
Yes.
But to simplify it, you just have to understand the basic principles. Started my career in banking, and then moved to what they call the FMCG sector, which is the fast-moving consumer goods sector. Basically, I've been working with manufacturers in that space, and so dealing with sustainability issues, ESG issues, looking at different areas, whether it's from the E, environment, S, social or governance aspect. I love what I do. I love sustainability. And I believe it's very pivotal, to development, sustainable development, and it has a lot of advantages for people. So, so that is it in a nutshell. I work in that space, and I've been doing that for some time now.
So I have two questions that are not part of my script.
Okay.
But then, first question would be, how many years have you been doing this?
Since 2004, I think.
This is 2024.
So this is 2024.
So that's 20 years.
Yeah, so since 2004. I actually started doing CSR out of, I was in the banking sector and I didn't like it. I'm sorry for bank. My husband is a banker, so
all
I don't
the
have
bankers,
anything.
don't be angry.
I don't have anything against them, but I didn't like it. And then I started to look for something that fitted into my purpose, to what I wanted to do and actualize as a person. And I stumbled across CSR in those days. So I started out as a consultant, doing newsletters, consulting for companies, and took up a couple of briefs, working with Nigerian breweries, Heineken, as a sub-consultant. Then I started working with British American Tobacco, fully got into British American Tobacco as a CSR manager, and that began my journey into CSR, sustainability, ESG. I morphed into corporate affairs as a whole, right? But I still kept on my sustainability heart and passion for that piece of work.
Awesome. So even though you don't want to be called an expert, I think 20 years already qualifies you as an expert. But I like the fact that you said you love it. It's something you're passionate about. So today we'll just refer to you as a sustainability lover, if you don't mind.
I like that.
Okay. So let's get into talking about ESG. Just briefly, you had mentioned the E for environment, social, and then governance. So we just want you to talk a bit about it. So for those people who don't really know what ESG means, let's know what the ESG goals are or practices are, and then we can get into the social part of it.
Okay, so I'm going to define it in very simple terms. It actually just takes a little bit of spin from sustainability in the sense that it's supposed to measure whether it's an investment or a company's sustainability practices, right? So it's a tool or a framework, if I may use those terms, that you use to measure how you're doing, what kind of impact you're making. Some investors use it to be able to gauge what kind of risk that, their investment in a particular or a company that they're investing in is exposed to along those lines of, environment, social, understanding what their social license to operate is, if there are any risks that might, crystallize in that angle, what the environmental risk might be, and if they have any governance gaps, right? So it's basically, that is what it is in a nutshell.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Now, like I said, we're going to be focusing on the S, which is the social aspect of it. And I would just love for you to, especially because we're talking to nonprofit and social enterprises, would you just explain a bit more about what social means to us?
Okay. So there are various parts of the social part of the ESG. One huge part is community development, community impacts, community involvement. The other one is looking at issues of equity, equality, inclusivity, diversity, human rights, and things like that. So that's basically what it stands for. It's a huge part of the ESG framework. Obviously, environment is also very, very key. I mean, I was coming here and I was talking to someone, and we're talking about the air quality in Lagos and in Abuja.
Yep.
And how, people have been coming down with different kinds of things, cold, flu, and all that. But the social is huge. And looking at it from a perspective of a non-profit actors are very, very important to socioeconomic development of any community or country or nation, because they basically push that fabric in that part of society, right, that is meant to help us basically live well, but addressing the issues that are very pertinent, to the citizens of a particular community or nation. So if we look at the S in the ESG, it looks at it from those different aspects. Issues of equity, extremely important in these days. Issues of inclusivity, making sure that we get the voices of whether they're ethnic groups or, gender, and making sure that there's equitable play across, different people, different ethnic groups, within a society or within, any place in a particular country is very, very important. And you find out that those kind of things are tensions between groups not being inclusive within a political sphere or within a community or within an organization, really causes a lot of tension points. Making sure that you're pushing the boundaries on human rights, is also very key, right? So these are things that are really very worrisome in this day and age. They're very pertinent, and non-profit actors really have a lot of, they have a huge part to play, making sure that those things are given the right kind of attention, that we focus a lot on them and are able to, just push solutions that would help us to address the problems and the challenges that we face in those areas.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You've just given us a very great foundation to further delve into. Now, you've talked a lot about diversity, equity, inclusion, and I want to start with those three words. And of course, we know that this is with regards to nonprofits. How can nonprofit organizations, incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion into their day-to-day operations?
It has to be deliberate. It has to be a conscious act that a non-profit organization will take. Any organization, actually. You have to deliberately understand that you want to have policies that drive, diversity, that are inclusive, right, within your organization. So it starts by defining what your core values are as a non-profit organization and understanding what are the benefits for you having a very diverse group or diverse set of employees, and being very inclusive in whether it's decision making or even in your choice of employees, right from in ethnic groups to different types of employees, gender, being gender focused, making sure that you're taking all those things into cognizance. So it has to be a deliberate act by the non-profit, understanding that these are the key requirements for this time and this time or for any organization, in 2024 or 2023 or 2022, right? But now we're in 2024. So it starts by defining what your values are, and also by then looking into the policies that you need to be able to craft and create to be able to entrench and live out those values within your organization, and also defining how you will take it from a cultural perspective. So it becomes the mindset of your leaders, your employees, to understand that, look, we embrace diversity and we want to be an inclusive organization. So I think it starts by that conscious effort.
Thank you. So I was just thinking, you talked about looking at our values. I'm thinking like I'm a nonprofit right now. So looking at our values and then crafting, policies that would ensure this inclusivity.
Don't
Sorry,
worry,
yes,
it
it always happens.
It's tongue twisting.
Yes, and so I'll leave that word alone. And diversity and equity. Okay, so is it possible are there cases when maybe your core values do not in some way involve some of these things? Do you now have to change your values at some point to say, okay, I don't think my core values would allow for equity? Or do all core values, allow for some of this, for all of this?
No, not all core values. You do find organizations who don't have values that embrace diversity. You find some that actually say they have values that embrace diversity, being inclusive, and also, being equitable in how they act and how they come across, and don't really act it out, right? So it's not all, organizations that have those values. However, it doesn't, how do I say it? It poses as a disadvantage to them, because you then have, if you have an organization or a non-profit that doesn't embrace values of diversity, then how do you sort of like interact with the communities in which you're supposed to be interacting with, right, on an equitable basis? Because you then have to interact and deal with a very diverse group of, actors across where you're probably focusing on. And I'll give you a very typical example. So if you have a non-profit that is based in Lagos and is focused on, how do you say it, human rights, and or even health, just something that has to do with, working on a health-focused initiative, right? In the course of your interaction with members of the society or your focus groups, you will meet a lot of diverse people. So you have to mirror what society is these days, because how do you then connect with your focus group in terms of understanding the different mindsets that occur across different varying groups? How do you interact with the older group of people? As I was coming here, I have a colleague who is with me in the studio, and, I was just making fun about, we've been talking about Gen Zs, millennials, baby boomers, and all that, so you have to deal with different people. And so it's very important that if you're dealing with, societal issues, you're dealing with issues that nonprofits normally deal with, whether it's health focused, human rights, or whatever, you'll be dealing with a diverse group of people across board that have different mindsets. So if you have plethora of you have diversity within your organization, you are able to then build the capacity for you to be able to handle different mindsets and to be able to come up with solutions that would help you, with the challenges that you're probably focused on tackling.
Absolutely.
I hope I'm coherent.
No, you were actually, because it just helped us break it down into bits and pieces for us to understand. And I love the fact that you said we need to mirror society. Yeah. Yes, and as we mirror society, we know what's happening, and that way we can incorporate that into our operations. Now let's talk a bit about employee engagement and well-being. Now that's a very interesting conversation, because these days, for non-profits especially, especially for small ones, there's just been the attrition rate has been really bad. For many people, staff are leaving, because maybe their welfare isn't well catered to. How do and then also thinking about the fact that the world that we're in today, there's a lot of economic challenges globally, nationally, and many nonprofits are just trying to survive, but then they can't afford to lose their staff. So what can they do to, ensure that they keep their foot soldiers, to keep the staff within the organizations while dealing with some of the economic challenges, but, still catering to the well-being of their staff?
I think it's, honestly speaking, it's not negotiable. Those two things are actually very, very critical. There's a part where, in terms of attrition, we find out that some of the reasons why people leave organizations basically sometimes do not even have anything to do with whether they're engaged or they're taking after the employees, in terms of well-being and all that. So there's that part. But then we stand the chance of keeping more people in our organizations, non-profit or otherwise, if those employees are, engaged, and if their well-being is well taken care of. And well-being, defining well-being is not necessarily, even though it's part of it, catering to their medical needs, right? These days we have HMOs cutting across from grassroots down to the very high premium HMOs. So you can basically get medical attention. Might not be, if I may use the word sexy enough, but it's something. I think it's the intent and the using the word, very deliberate attempt to make sure that your employees' well-being is taken care of. It's as simple as, making sure that you pay attention to their needs in terms of how do they, as simple as maybe getting from point A to point B in terms of transport, in terms of making sure that they're secure right? These are days where we have a lot of criminal activities in the country, making sure that they're secure and their well-being is intact in them traveling from point A to point B. It's about the flexibility of their working hours. Are they able to work from home? Do they have the right equipment? And sometimes it doesn't take much. I have a bundle in my house that I pay internet for, and it doesn't cost me a lot in terms of, when I'm on and when I'm off. So it's a whole plethora of things. And I think it's not negotiable in this day. I think COVID has really shone the light on the fact that you have to take care of your employees' well-being. It's also about showing care, right?
Yes.
Just showing care, that you care, taking time out to talk to them. It's not only about the physical well-being, but also about the mental well-being, right? Making sure that they're emotionally, sound, giving them a listening ear, having access to counselors. And I think we can get some of those things in state hospitals where you have counselors you can have an arrangement where people can then have private time to be able to talk, to therapists and all that. And in terms of engagement is pretty easy. It's understanding how do you want to keep your employees engaged. And I'll tell you a few things about some of the things that we do and some of the things that I've done in the course of my career. So when COVID hit, we had to re-strategize in my workplace in terms of how do we then keep employees engaged in a virtual world, right? So it's about then defining what that engagement means to employees, right? Understanding, getting a survey, what would you like to see? How would you like to be engaged? Creating fun in the workplace, making sure that people like to come to work and making sure that there's always something different that you're giving to them, giving them the right kind of information, from time to time, coming up with focus group discussions, where you're then engaging on one-on-ones. I'm sure they're very small organization, one-on-ones with your line manager, being very deliberate to ensure that, you're keeping them engaged and active. So there are a lot of things that you can do around different days, bonding sessions, the other day, I work for Coca-Cola HPC, and we just had Christmas with Coke Studio. Exciting, big concerts, right? And so we thought, why don't we bring Coke Studio into the organization and just create some fun with employees around. So we did that by getting them engaged. So we are very deliberate about making sure that employees are engaged. And I think that can also be acted out in non-profits, which sometimes might be even very smaller.
Yes.
So if you have a very small group of employees, it's not very hard for you to then sit down and say, what's my engagement strategy, right? What kind of employees do I have? Different age groups, right? Gender, and coming up with a strategy to engage them across different areas, right? Some might be fund related, some might be learning related, and some might just be, basic interactions during the course of work, or how we then conduct the way we work, to making sure that employees are, optimized. Some might just be simple things about how do I keep them really motivated by empowering them, to act and to be themselves. Some might just be allowing them to be able to express and find their purpose and in the place of work. And I think that's something that is evolving rapidly now. So you find employees are even much more engaged when they're able to express their purpose and align it to the organization's purpose, however small that organization might be. So understanding exactly, what employees want. I have my colleague, my HR head of HR colleague was saying to me this morning that she plans to have a series of conversations across the organizations with select group of employees, just to understand again, how are they doing, what's motivating them. So, but basically, I've gone through different things and
Yes,
not in a very structured manner. but it can be very structured and very deliberate. So it differs from organization to organization. So, but the non-profit in this space, and I hear what you've said, attrition rate,
Yes.
what's the motivation? They're probably not paid as much as they want to, right? But pay is not everything. Those two things, engagement and well-being. And I'll tell you that for a lot of people, before you even move from point A to point B, if you're not jackpying, if you're not leaving the country, if you're moving from one place to the other place, those two things are very critical in you understanding whether my well-being will be taken care of in the other organization, or whether that organization will keep me as engaged, or in whatever way, as much as where I'm coming from. If those two things are absent, it's very hard to keep an employee. So it's very possible for a non-profit to embrace those two areas.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You drilled out a lot just to let you know. Yes. And one of the beautiful things about podcasts is that, you can rewind and just take notes. So I'm certain that all of our listeners and watchers would be able to take notes of everything that you've said, which are very important, by the way. And one thing that I hear you say a lot since this conversation started is the word deliberate. And you've emphasized a lot on that deliberateness, So I think that sustainability really has been deliberate, just being deliberate, as an organization, just focusing, highlighting what needs to be focused on. And, you were giving some of these examples, and I was just thinking about my organization. I work with ACT Foundation, and it was just recently we had a conversation with our CEO, and she was really just talking about some of these things that you mentioned, really just asking us, how are we stepping into the year? What are we thinking about? And it wasn't really about the work. It was about us. And to confess, I felt good about that, just knowing that it wasn't just about what you have to deliver. It's really about how you're doing and what you're looking forward to doing in the year that will give you satisfaction and fulfillment. So, yes, just to emphasize some of the things that you've said. And thank you for some of the examples that you've shared. I'll just go straight to the next question because I know that we're running out of time. And that would be about stakeholder engagement. Now, we've seen cases where, for us as nonprofits, you want to go into a community to carry out a certain intervention project. And most times we just go there and give them what we think they need. We don't take our time to ask questions. We don't take our time to, do our surveys, speak to people. So how can nonprofits take on stakeholder engagement? What better approach can we, have to going into communities and carrying out this project? How can we engage our stakeholders better, talking about this?
The first thing is, I think this is very important in understanding what the community needs or the stakeholder needs. And I think not only nonprofits, I think generally we don't do enough of that, right? Recently, I know that I have been having a conversation around, we have these community interventions. And is this what they really need or what they want? And how is it addressing the developments that they really are somehow seeking for, but thinking that some of the interventions they're asking for really might address their needs or their wants? I basically think that it's wants and not addressing the deep-seated needs. Again, I think I'll use the word being very deliberate. Is about knowing that I'm going to carry out this intervention in this community. There has to be some groundwork in understanding who are the members of the community. There are oftentimes different actors within a community in different areas, whether it's age, different demographics, so to say, that one has to then tease out. And then, so I'll even understand who the influencers are, the decision makers, and just take a sample size out of that. And just one of 5 to 10 questions, even 10 questions is a lot, 5 questions that will just basically give an idea of, what is happening in the community, what the community really needs, what the people in the community really want, And I think it cuts across not only community interventions, but in any kind of targeted initiative that non-profit organizations have. You basically have to go in there and do like a sort of like a baseline study. And based on what we find, right, that is already existing and the information that we're able to squeeze out, then we can begin to see and understand the different dimensions of challenges and also different dimensions of solutions that we can bring to bear. So it's sometimes we think that we need a lot of money or we need a lot of human resource to be able to carry out those interventions and do those stakeholder engagements. The most critical is not necessarily so. The most critical thing is being able to map who the stakeholders are, having a sample size to be able to talk to and understand what exactly are the key requirements or what we need to do the intervention. That gives you a lot of insight into exactly whether the solution I want to bring is accurate or the solution I want to bring should be something different. And we're doing something like that. We want to start, we've started our Youth Empowered program, but we want to redesign and take it to another, enhance it basically. But before we've done that, we've done a series of, workshops, basically making inquiries. And these are very simple things. I'm calling you to come to my office and volunteer, give me information because I know that that's what you do the most, understand who the network is and understand who the key actors and the stakeholders in that area are, and just then interacting with them to get the information. And once we do that, then we're basically able to design better solutions. And I think that has to happen. Sometimes I think what nonprofit organizations and any organizations, don't let me just focus, have is time, targets. I want to tick the box, you understand? I really want to move. And so because of that, we then do not deep dive enough to be able to understand what we really need to do. But understanding stakeholders' needs is very simple, very simple. Know where your target audience is, map out who the stakeholders are, have a sample size, take your questions, 1 to 5 questions, pen and paper, seek out time to talk to them, right? I think the most tedious part actually is actually getting them to talk to you. I think that is it. And giving you and being comfortable enough to give you the information.
Absolutely.
I think that is it. But outside of that, I think it can be as simple as that. And it's very important that we do that so that we can have the right kind of solutions in our interventions.
Wow. Thank you so much. This has been a very rich conversation, just talking about this. But lastly, and maybe in 1 minute, yes, I just wanted to talk a bit about donor retention, donor engagement and retention, because it's also very important for us as nonprofits. So how can we cultivate and maximize this as nonprofits?
So I'll tell you in 1 minute what I find lacking: understanding the requirements of the donor organization. Once you understand what my requirements are, so if you come to me for sponsorship or something, sometimes the requests we get are not in sync with what we are geared to carry out interventions in. So I find there's a lot of misalignment in that area. The other thing is also understanding exactly how to address my needs, what to sell to me to be able to give you so I think it takes, and if I may, it takes some sort of informality. It takes you networking and getting to cultivate relationships with key actors within that donor organization, to be able to sit with them and in a very friendly manner. And I'm making it very easy and very simple. Sometimes it's not as sexy as you write me a proposal and then you send me on an email.
Yeah.
No, it takes a little bit more informality than that. And so by so doing, you know, I'll talk to you about my youth empowerment program, what I really want to see from it, you know, and I get very passionate about it, and I'm talking to you about it, and you're getting information that, you know, can help you begin to think of how can you bring solutions to bear. So it's basically developing a network, right? And being present in oiling those relationships within that network. A little bit of informality, not even a little bit of informality, just connecting with the key actors within that network in a very informal way, in such a way that you develop the trust and you can get the right kind of information for you to be able to build, whatever proposals that you want. And I think that level of relationship as well helps to keep and sustain the relationship over a period of time. In just a couple of seconds, had a partner, right, who we wanted to scale up a particular program and wanted to scale up, but this partner was not, wasn't listening, right, to what our needs were, and eventually had to drop off because we decided to then open it up to a pitch to be able to get. Now, what was the advantage that this partner had? Remember, I used the word partner.
Yes.
So that means there's an existing relationship. But the relationship was not a listening, building, the rapport to be able to understand what are my needs as an organization and be able to then prefer solutions to that. So the eventuality was opening it up to other actors who probably would listen more and, understand what the needs are. And, so yes, that is it in a nutshell.
Wow. Fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been very enriching, and I'm certain it has also been to everyone who's been listening. Thank you so much for coming on ACTPod. This is why we call it a wrap on this conversation. We've learned a lot about sustainability, I must say. And of course, the key word, being deliberate. You just have to be deliberate about everything. And I know for some who are thinking, how do we go about this? Just start with baby steps. She's reeled out a lot of things, and you can start from one step to the other. And before you know what's happening, you also become a sustainability expert, in quote. Anyways, thank you so much for being on this episode. We'll be back again on ACTPod with another interesting conversation for you. Until then, stay blessed. Bye.
Thank you for listening to ACTPod. For inquiries and feedback, please reach us on actpod@actrustfoundation.org. Follow us on social media at actfoundation_ on Instagram and Twitter, and Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation on Facebook. The show is proudly powered by Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation. ACTPod, our story, our continent.